And joining me right now to talk more about that in this exclusive interview is Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. Governor, it's great to see you.
Maria, thank you so much for having me. It's fun to be with you this morning.
Yes, right back at you. You just returned from an international trade trip. You visited Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, trying to strengthen our supply chain relationships that are not China dependent. You just heard Michael McCaul, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Your thoughts on this issue? If China invades Taiwan, they can turn it all off on the world.
Well, we know what China's trying to do, and that is to dominate the world. And they're going to use every arrow in their quiver, from surveillance balloons to TikTok to intellectual property theft to economic coercion and to saber rattling, if not more. And so we need to wake up and recognize that, particularly in these most important sectors, semiconductors, the supply chain for pharmaceuticals, supply chains for automotive and for wind turbines and for solar panels. I mean, we have now decided, at least our president has, that he's going to drive us into these industries. We have to secure supply chains for these with our friends. And that's why when I was in Taiwan and Japan and Korea, this is what I was speaking with both their political leaders and their business leaders about, bringing those supply chains, not just to America, but to Virginia. Virginia's been number one in so many polls for business, and it's time for us to get some of these supply chains into the Commonwealth. I was excited about what I heard, but I was also very, very comforted by the unity that political leaders and business leaders in these countries that are really at risk because of China threat want to strengthen relationships in the U.S. and make sure these supply chains are robust and we have a shared economic future.
Well, did you get a sense that those leaders in those countries understand the threat of communist China? I mean, governors have stepped up. You were among the first to come out publicly and say, we will not allow China to acquire land in Virginia. It's off limits, CCP. What did you get from the leaders that you spoke with in Taiwan?
There is no lack of clarity at the threat, and that's why they are moving so quickly. We see the Japanese prime minister doubling their national defense budget. We see that all of a sudden the Korean leaders are forming alliances with Japan and the Philippines and Australia and the United States in order to tighten these relationships. And then finally, of course, in Taiwan, President Tsai is got a steel back, and she is clear that she's not only working for their economic future, but for their future.
Yeah.
And it's these relationships that are so important to continue to foster and strengthen. At the end of the day, the United States has to be strong here. And this is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that our allies have had, is that the Biden administration has projected weakness. Yeah. And as a result, they, in fact, don't quite know how they're going to react. And this is why these economic ties, and particularly to bring the semiconductor supply chain, the pharmaceutical supply chain, the automotive supply chain into the United States so it's trusted. I want it to come to Virginia. I think will be a great home to a lot of it. But this is critical, not just for our economic future, but for our national security future.
Well, when you went on this trip, I thought to myself, okay, well, the governor is going on this international trade trip. He must be running for president. But you said yesterday you're not going to throw your hat in the ring.
Well, what I've been very clear with from the very beginning is how humbling it is for my name to be in this circle. I mean, 40 years ago, I was a kid washing dishes and taking out trash. And now I'm a governor in Virginia. And I think people are paying such attention to Virginia because of the things that we've been able to accomplish in a purple state. We've been able to drive through economic growth by cutting taxes. We're reforming our schools. We back the blue, and we're seeing crime come down. I mean, we're standing up for the things that Virginians wanted us to stand up for, and I think Americans are watching it. It's a humbling conversation. My focus is on Virginia. We've got my midterms this year, the Virginia midterms. I want to hold our House and flip our Senate. And I want to demonstrate that conservative common sense leadership can, in fact, win in a purple state.
Well, you've been incredible, and that's why your approval ratings are rising. Congrats on everything. And you knew very early on that education was the one issue that was so important to families. The Norfolk, Virginia Public School Board is now considering adopting new sex education, the curriculum for middle schoolers created by Planned Parenthood. want to get your take on this because parents are pushing back already, saying that the content is way too explicit. It's not age appropriate in the middle school. American Federation of Teachers President Randy Weingarten is trying to rewrite history last week. You've got to hear this. Here's what she said. Watch.
We spent every day from February on trying to get schools open. We knew that remote education was not a substitute for opening schools.
Well, that's not how many of us remember it, Governor.
No. Well, let me just begin, if I can, with this issue in Norfolk, and this is right at the heart of why Virginians elected me. And the school board there has not followed the appropriate curriculum process. There is a stern letter coming from our new state superintendent of schools that is being sent in collaboration with our Attorney General, Jason Miyares, that this is not right. And they have not only not followed the right curriculum process, they haven't engaged with parents. And we signed legislation last year that demanded that parents have a right to opt out of curriculum. And at the core of this, parents have a say about their children. And this is one of the top reasons why Virginians, a purple state, came together, not just Republicans, but independents and Democrats, and said, we don't like what's going on in our schools. And for Randy Weingarten to come out and say that they were trying to get schools open, well, let me tell you, this is counter to anything people believe. And in fact, she was probably my best support in getting elected because they kept schools shut. And what we saw was what it did to children. Virginia's is the absolute quintessential case. Schools were shut all the way through until the fall of September of 2021.
Yeah.
And Virginia suffered the largest learning loss in fourth grade reading and math in the country. A 12-inch screen is not a quality education. Parents know it. They know the truth. They cannot spin their way out of this. The Biden administration went to them, and who did they seek counsel from? The teachers union, who doesn't pay attention to students and parents. They take care of bureaucrats and politicians. And so I think this is going to continue to be one of the leading issues in our nation. This is why this year in Virginia, I am confident that Virginians will again stand up. They're going to vote for parents. They're going to vote for students. And they're going to reject this respin of what we all know happened, which is the teachers union wanted the schools closed.
But look at the damage that it's caused. I mean, so many of us feel that our children are just being left behind. And you look at the children of America versus the children of China. Yeah. I mean, they're ahead of us. How do we get back?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to recognize that what was been done prior to the pandemic in Virginia was laying the foundation for this decline in performance. The standards of our expectations of excellence were lowered consistently. Virginia went from having the highest standards to the lowest, and the children performed to that low level. And then you put on top of it closing the schools for an unnecessary period of time. And before you know it, we have these massive learning losses. And on top of that is the behavioral health challenges coming out of all of this, where students are no longer feeling confident about what they can do. We have to raise expectations in our schools. We have a whole literacy program in Virginia for K through third that we're driving. If you can't read by the third grade, you are really in trouble in life.
Wow.
And then finally, we are making sure that parents feel empowered to make decisions for their children. We've opened up new avenues for choice in Virginia, and we passed legislation that says that parents are at the head of the table and they get to make decisions for their children.
Governor, you spoke at the Reagan Foundation and Institute last night. Tell us about that. You were talking about the future of the Republican Party.
What an honor it was to be there. And again, a kid who was washing dishes and taking out trash has a chance to speak at the Reagan Library. It was extraordinary. And we can't help but step back in this speaker series of A Time for Choosing and reflect on the fact that President Reagan challenged us all to be our better selves and to make a choice between right and wrong and to stand up for those values that we hold dear. And so to have a chance to reflect on that and really challenge us, not just as Republicans, but as Americans, to stand up for what we know is right, freedom and liberty, to recognize that individual rights should always be protected. Our Constitution should be protected. that in fact these most important topics, these kitchen table issues that we hear across Virginia, and I think we hear across the country, for education, for community safety, for keeping more money in your pocket because it doesn't belong to the government. I mean, these are truths, and we need to stand up for them.
But how do we push back on the fact that we're looking at the other side? I mean, the Democrats have been colluding with Twitter to suppress truth and amplify lies. You've got, the other side also saying they want to pack the Supreme Court. I mean, you say we've got to follow the Constitution. Your colleagues on the left are not.
My ray of hope is what Virginians did in 2021. And it's my real message of encouragement. A blue state came together around a new path forward and said, we're going a different direction. And they elected a Republican governor, Winsome Earl Sears, a Republican lieutenant governor, Jason Miara as a Republican attorney general. Yeah. We flipped our House. Virginians stood up and made a decision, not Republicans versus Democrats, but as Virginians based on values. That is my word of encouragement, that we can do this. We should focus on these most important truths. Results matter. And what we've proven is not only can we win, but in 15 short months, we can go to work with these conservative, common sense solutions, and we can take a state that was falling behind, and Virginia's winning now.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that this is the encouragement that Americans need to recognize that we're not stuck. We have to seize the moment and take charge and lead. And when we do, we can not only win, but we can have a better future.
And that's what you did. You took charge. You had a complete career change, and you're doing so well. Do you think it was partly because you were a business guy coming from private equity, that you knew how to run the show and ensure that Virginians and listening to the people were getting what they needed?
Well, I do think that having a completely different perspective, being an outsider, not being burdened by a lifetime of politics, allows one to bring that fresh perspective. And I think that's what we've done. We've solved problems differently. We've not taken no as an acceptable answer. When people say it can only be done this way, that encourages me to do it the exact opposite way. And I do believe that this is what we need in politics today, is fresh perspective. We need to put down the way things have been done and embrace new ideas, recognizing, again, that common sense wins. Common sense works. And common sense will lead to a better future.
All right, Governor, keep on going. Good to see you.
Great to be with you.
Thank you so much.